Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I'm very excited to speak with the expert that I have on. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Hello, Matt. My name is Matt Stilwell, or Matthew, if I've either done something wrong or perhaps you happen to be my mum. I am an ICF accredited certified intuitive coach and also an avid golfer. And I am an expert in mindset and performance coaching. My passion being helping golfers unlock their full potential by, I guess, cultivating a positive mindset and a mental attitude.
Absolutely. I think that I've seen a number of documentaries about unlocking mindset, specifically in the golfing realm, but I think that it applies in other places as well. And I think that the main thing that I've taken away from these documentaries is that when you are on like the PGA Tour, for instance, or the big golfing events or these big wrestling events or these big arm wrestling competitions where you're going to arm wrestle and potentially win a semi truck to also possibly win back the love of your son. What you got to do is you got to find the smaller events, the smaller stakes places to go and learn how to love the game, so to speak, again. Get the enjoyment, the little like idiosyncrasies back of like, oh, that was weird. Oh, why did that happen that way? Why did the ball go that way? Why did the person's arm break that way? And so one of the best ways in the with the documentary film Happy Gilmore, when he goes to the putt-putt golfing and he gets frustrated with all of the animatronics and everything like that. But the thing was, it was getting him into a position where he could really, really focus in on some of the hindrances that he had in his game. And that ultimately helped him in the long run of his capability of understanding and respecting the game of golf. And I think that's something that a lot of people, even outside of golf, overlook. They get so in the weeds, so to speak, or in the bunker. If it was golf, I guess I don't know. I haven't played golf in a really long time. I was very bad at it, but they kind of lose perspective on things, and they're not capable of understanding the things that kind of brought them to it that made them really enjoy it initially, whether or not it was the smell of the grass or just being out in the world or just the creative dynamics if it's something outside of sport. And getting reconnected with that, I think, is one of the foundational things that I think a lot of us forget about because we get past a certain level and we work so hard to get into the big box. We forget what it was like when we were in the small box and how that small box felt like an entire galaxy, but now we're in an entire universe and we don't know what we're doing anymore. And I think that one of the also the important things about the mindset of just finding joy whenever you can. One thing that I think that would make a lot of sense for somebody that's trying to reconnect with these sorts of things is to find a treat. And I'm not saying treat yourself like a dog or a cat, like with a reward system or anything like that. But on some level, I am because you do something good or like you persist, and then you can go and you can have some banana pudding. You can have the hazelnut hippo from Kinder because you had a long day of like working towards your craft and trying to figure that thing out and trying to put yourself back into that place. Or you could do it how I kind of do it is every day I wake up and I try to give myself a sweet treat because I get to remind myself like, oh, I got to go to work. Yeah, but like the world is a beautiful place and it is full of fun and whimsy. So the first thing that touches my lips is either coffee and or this little sweet treat that I've set aside for myself for that morning. And then obviously healthy food and healthy living and planning meals and what have you to make sure that I'm not completely clogging my arteries with this banana pudding. But yeah, so that's just some of the ideas that I have based around this. About how much of that would you say was accurate?
Okay, so I was thoroughly enjoying that. Now, percentage-wise accuracy, I honestly I think we're 30 to 40% accurate.
Okay.
And I think the thing that brings that 40% up from what could have easily been a 2 was the idea of learning to love the game.
I did. I see.
That is the absolute core of this, and I believe the absolute core of anything anybody should be doing in their life, whatever that might be. So from a golf point of view, absolutely. If you're not enjoying it and you're not loving the challenge, you're not enjoying being out in the open and ideally in that mode, not being at work, then you've got a bit of a problem. The one little bit I wanted to pull you up on was Happy Gilmore. I know you
Hmm.
mentioned it was a documentary. I think we should probably
Okay.
just highlight that. I think it was a work of fiction.
Okay. Yeah, it
I
wasn't like a
could be
biopic
no, I
about
could
the
be wrong.
history. Yeah, historically, I have been somewhat confused about whether or not movies are fiction or documentaries, but yeah, it could very well be a fiction.
I was also enjoying the part about the small galaxy in a box, but I must admit that it lost me after a little while. But
Yeah, that metaphor lost the string, so to speak.
yeah, but really good, really, really good. And I
Thank
think
you.
golf, the whole point of what I do with my clients and in my own spare time is that golf and life have some real similarities and they really play out side by side. And a lot of what I do is helping golfers with more, they believe it's just to do with their golf game, but it's a lot more to do with their mindset. And the mental game is all about building a positive attitude. And it goes far beyond what just golf is. So the idea of being curious rather than
Hmm.
accusing. So this idea that ask yourself some kind of relevant questions, your what questions, your how questions, rather than the why. Why did I miss that putt? Why did I do this? Why do I bother playing this game? They're not helpful turns of phrase. If you want to get better, you need to be talking to yourself far more kindly. The game of golf itself and life throws up more than enough pain and suffering and issues without you piling that stuff on as well. So asking yourself kind of curious questions. You could be in a really difficult situation on the golf course. You could have your ball in a really horrible lie, in a really bad position. The worst thing you can do is start to beat yourself up in that moment. All you can do is kind of be curious about what the ball might do out of that lie. It's to play the game in the moment, which is obviously another big key fundamental factor of mindset, and that is getting in the moment. And you
Hmm.
mentioned in your briefing earlier, you talked about perspective and being in the weeds. And when you're on the golf course, as in your life, if you've got something important coming up, you could be anxious about what's coming, you could be in fear of what's already been, and you could be worrying about it. All you can do is think about the here and now and the present moment. And on the golf course especially, there are so many ways you can do that. Just looking at the trees, just looking at the sky, taking a breath will bring you back to the here and now rather than just worrying about what the ball is now going to do or being annoyed at yourself at what's just happened. You cannot control that. And there's something really, really fundamental when it comes to mindset about letting go and letting go, especially of the uncontrollable things, and having some
Absolutely.
perspective on what those controllable things are. And really, there's not a huge amount we can control, really. And the moment you get your head around that and you prepare properly and you stick to a process, that's when you can start getting out of your own way. You can start clearing your mind, your body relaxes. And what happens on the golf course when your body relaxes and your mind clears is that you hit better shots. And not only that, if you hit a bad shot, you're in a far better position to accept it and move on to the next one. And it's all about process. This is process, not outcome. The number of people I talk to who worry about what the final outcome of either this shot or this hole or this round or this year will give them, you can't control that. Once that ball has left that club face, you can't control it. You have to accept it and you have to move on. If you've prepared properly and your process has been stuck to, then it's in a far better position to be good. And if it's not good and it hits a sprinkler head and flies across the green, what? You can't do anything about that. That's out of your
Abs-
control.
Absolutely. Yeah, this reminds me of an anecdote that I have not been able to verify, but that I feel is true. And this, I don't know how much about the history of American presidents, but we had a president who was notoriously overweight and kind of looked like a walrus. His name was William Howard Taft. And he was really not a good president. He didn't want to be doing it. He had just done it after Teddy Roosevelt. And that actually led to the split of the Republican Party at the time. And William Howard Taft did everything he could to run a good campaign against Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson and all these things. And afterwards, after he lost decidedly, somebody came up to him and was like, "Well, like you lost so bad." And his response was, "Well, I did the best I could given the circumstances that I was in." And despite the failings of his character, the bad things that he did, that always stuck with me as like somebody that was like clearly trying to make the best out of the situation given the circumstances that he was in. And I think that that's kind of a beautiful thing that we all should strive to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's a wider context to that in the wider world of coaching and psychology, probably beyond that. If you start telling yourself and presenting yourself as someone in that instance who isn't a very good president, then there's a very good chance you're not going to be a very good president.
Right.
And if you want to be a good golfer, there's no point you turning up to the course saying, "I'm a really bad golfer."
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
that's the beginning of the end in many ways. There is another little anecdote. It's a fairly famous one, actually, I think, from Paul Lazinger, who still is a fantastic putting coach. He used to be on the tour. He probably played for the Ryder Cup team in the US. He was one of the best players in the world, and he's now regarded as one of the best putting coaches. And when he was playing, he may have had a round that perhaps wasn't at his best, and he missed a few. And his playing partner would come up to him at the end and say, "Oh, I'm really sorry to see you didn't have a great round of putting there, did you?" And Paul kind of looked at him with a really confused sort of look, and his answer was, "No, I putted great today. They just didn't go in." So
Fantastic.
he's the mechanics of everything,
Beautiful.
mindset. We're in the right spot. The ball doesn't go down. Can't do anything about that.
Yeah, my hips were in the right spot. My
Yeah,
hands were placed perfectly. I took into consideration the wind and the slope and everything like that, and it just didn't
totally.
work. That's beautiful.
Sometimes it just doesn't work. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's fantastic. What was the thing, if you can pin it down, that kind of got you initially interested in trying to help others with this?
Okay. Well, I have played golf specifically all my life, wanting obviously to get better and better, as most golfers do, not being able to put too much time to it, but playing the game.
Mhm.
And then coinciding that with work, I had a career in the world of bidding, if you can believe it. So
Okay.
helping organizations to bid for large contracts. And my role there was to go in and was to help and to coach bid teams to be a little bit braver in the way they bid, to think about what the client really, really wants, and to help them to build a story around what the client needs. And I would help them and I would coach them in that. So I'd go into businesses and I'd go into things like that. And then I got my coaching accreditation for one-on-one coaching, which I do from a life perspective. But
Mhm.
then I personally started to see a plateau in my own game where I was one of those guys who would hit the ball into the rough or out of bounds, and I would beat myself up and I would be desperately upset, and it would ruin my weekend, and I'd take it home with me, and my girlfriend at the time would be annoyed and she'd get more angry at, "Why are you bothering to play golf if you're like this?" And I
Right.
couldn't unstick and I couldn't unlock what that was until I did. One day I figured it out, and I read a lot of books and I read a lot of coaching things, and a lot of the stuff I'm telling my clients is about letting go of the stuff you can't control, is about asking curious questions of your team members, and if you're leading a group of people, ask them curious questions. Don't point your finger and ask why, because that's accusatory. Be more curious. Come back over this side of the fence. And I started implementing those things with myself. And the truth is, my handicap tumbled. I'm a single figure golfer now. I haven't had a lesson. Funnily enough, I have a lesson tomorrow on my short game because it's something I
Okay.
want to work on this year. But up until now I haven't had a lesson in years. And I'm an absolute advocate that working on your head and your mind is not just beneficial for your game of golf, but it is beneficial for your life in general. So yeah, that is my passion. That's my path.
Absolutely wonderful. Matt, this has been so insightful, and I think it's been helpful for me because I've been able to kind of look back at similarities, especially like with when you mentioned your ex there. I'm like, oh, I've had that conversation in with former partners of like, oh, why don't you just quit if you're not enjoying it? And being like having to reconnect with my enjoyment. So that really resonated with me. If people wanted to learn more about you or more about what you do, where would you recommend that they go?
Okay, well, I'm all over social media. You'll be happy to hear. So it's at Matt Stillwell Coaching. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and various other things, including I believe what the kids call the TikTok. I
Oh,
think I'm on there.
fantastic.
And I've got a podcast, the Positive Golf Mindset Podcast, which is me chatting every couple of weeks about how to improve your mindset. And it is about golf, but it is also very deliberately pulling you back into the real world to give you that insight.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending your time with me today and chatting about this. I really feel like I learned a lot and I hope other people did as well.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining. Before we go today, I want to thank Ryan Lawson, my dear friend, for making the theme music for Mattsplaining. Ryan can be reached at beatblenderstudios@gmail.com or at Beat Blender Studios on Instagram and TikTok.